It's Angela Todd, your favorite woman's historian, and I wanted to talk to you today about, oops, I got notes I've got to read, um, the Great Kosher Meat War of 1902. So, last week or the week before, I went to a talk produced, I guess, by the Yiddish Book Center, and it was Scott Seligman talking about his book by that title, The Great Kosher Meat War of 1902. And it's fascinating because, as always, with some kind of historic event or, small crisis or whatever, there was this whole line of people involved, right? So there was a meat packers trust in the Midwest where they were pushing to raise the price of beef. And for kosher meat, now I'm not Jewish, so I had learned a lot from the talk about kosher meat, and I hope I've got it all right. So, in order for it to be kosher, it needs to be shipped to New York City and killed on the hoof, they called it. So, it needs to be killed there and served within 72 hours. So, there are the meat packers in the Midwest, the New York City suppliers of kosher beef, and the slaughterers that would come, kosher slaughterers that would come in and kill them kindly, I guess is one way to say it. And then the retail butchers that would resell the meat. There's this whole line of people involved in this process, right? And so just after the 1900s, everybody's prices were kind of going up a little bit. Except once you multiply that over, what is it, 4 different layers of interactions with the animal, it all comes down to the family. So the kosher women in New York City were outraged by the meat prices at the retail butchers. So they came together and they waged a strike against the butchers. And of course, the butchers then turned to the slaughterers and the New York City suppliers, and they turned to the Midwest Meat Trust, who in turn tried to get lower prices from their suppliers. So it's this whole thing that comes down to rest on the shoulders of these kosher moms in New York City. And what's fascinating about it is, for me, as a family, personal women's historian, is that he said that he tried everything to find information and photographs about these women, including finding their descendants and asking them, interviewing them, doing oral histories, asking them if they had any family archives related to the meat strike. Nobody had anything. Nobody had anything. He didn't even have photos to share at his talk. And I did take a screenshot. Scott, I hope you don't mind me sharing this. Uh-oh, if I can find where I can share my screen. Oh, poopy. Well, I will drop it in the comments. So, he's got the women's names, all this great activity about the power of these moms that came together to wage this strike. The strike went up and down the East Coast, out into some of the bigger cities in the Midwest. And it was this kosher women's, there wasn't like a head of projects trying to go to Boston and, get things riled up. Just women came together kind of on this collaborative plane and started working together to fight back against this elevation in prices. And their families didn't even know about it, which I have a lump in my throat now just telling you. Their families didn't know they were involved. They didn't have any photos. They didn't have any data or letters or journals or anything about their activities. So he's the second academic to write about the kosher meat strike of 1902, just the second. And he relied greatly on archival documents and newspaper reports because the women themselves didn't have archives or weren't represented. And so for me it was, oh, good Lord, this is a place where I have to intervene, right? So these could have been our grandmothers. And one of the women there are 4 or 5 that he talked about. One of the women died in 1960. So it's not like the time before history, right? It's not that oh, our families didn't know in the 20s that I don't think any of that's true. But imagine if they had found a journal from one of those women. Just imagine a diary or a letter to a granddaughter saying, oh, either a daughter saying, I've been so busy, or a granddaughter saying, oh, yes, I remember when I was marching for meat. There are so many ways that we are still connected. And I also wanted to take this moment to say something about history, like professional history, and family history and women's history. And I keep saying it's not history without us women. It just isn't. It's just not complete. We're not done yet. And so I'm pleading with you to reach out to your elders. And it's not always just one phone call, right? It sometimes needs to be more directed. Tell me about when you went to college, or tell me about that first job you had, waitressing. Some of the most scandalous information I've gotten in community projects has been from the wait staff. And by scandalous, I don't mean anything too scandalous, but really granular details about the structure of the hierarchy inside the work with the wait staff, how the customers were treated depending on who they were. I feel like so much history is lost because we're just not asking the right people. And I guess that's what I'm going to close with, is to maybe think about your elders, your librarian, your coaches, your grandparents as vaults. You know, I had an auntie that lived in DC during the big marches of 1963. I got so much information about what that was like from her perspective. She was a little bit on the sidelines. She wanted to be more involved, and she had two little children. Everybody's got something to add. I feel it strongly in my bones. So, thank you for watching, those of you that are catching this. And I've got a new camera on my computer, so every time you see me, I think I'm trying harder not to cut off my head or show you the junk outside my screen. Thank you for watching. And if you have an elder's journal that you want to figure out how to preserve, please tag me in the comments. If you think, oh, I have a journal and what else should I save with it, then I have typed in the link to sign up to get a very concise one sheet on here are the major things that you should save and a little blip about what not to bother saving. So you can get that from me and get on my mailing list. And thank you for watching. I'll see you next Tuesday. Bye. Uh-oh, now what?